Hi, I'm Mark Klinski. I'm about 7 miles away from Bob, Caledonia, Minnesota, southeast corner. I did roller crimping of soybeans last season. I had an oat crop there, harvested July. I put some fertilizer out there, P&K, and chisel plowed it to put my rye in. I think that was my first mistake. I probably would have moldboard plowed the more level parts. We got pretty sloping land and I got terraces, but I had an awful lot of foxtail and grass come up this last season. I think if I would have moldboard plowed it, it might have got rid of more of that grass. Hopefully, that's what I'll try next time anyway. I did put out 195 pounds of rye with a no-till drill. After I worked it, I chisel plowed it, I disced it. I used a flat roller to level it all off flat. I went in there with our no-till drill and put the rye in. So that might help the roller crimping part. Some people were saying about the uneven ground. I did use a flat roller before I put the rye in to get everything flattened out, which did a pretty good job. The rye was about 6-8 inches or so before freeze up. I seeded my rye first part of September, so it got pretty good growth in the fall. This last spring, like everybody else says, we had about 8 inches of snow on the 18th of April. Rye did nothing until like the 1st of May. Then it grew about a foot a week. 25th of May, we had a big rainstorm and wind. The rye was about 5 foot tall in the morning. In the evening, it was about 8 inches. 2 days later, 95% of that rye was back up again. So that kind of roller crimping it or so early, it's going to come up. I mean, the same as blowing it down, I think. But it all stood back up again. I did use a no-till drill. I put about 175,000 population with a no-till drill in the standing rye and used Bob's roller crimper a day later. Because of the wet spring, I didn't want to wait, so I crimped it the next day. The next time I do this, I would probably use our corn planter and put them on 30-inch rows, just because I might have a rescue treatment with a cultivator or a zapper or something else that I could drive through the beans with. They were food grade beans, so they didn't stand very good. They got a lot of foliage on them. And by the time harvest came, they were all flat. I really had a struggle getting them picked up and left a lot out there. I probably ended up with 32, 35 bushel an acre, which I was satisfied with. Because of all the big rains in the spring, I got terraces. All the water that came out of the terraces was clean water. There was no erosion out there. That really impressed me. I mean, that was one of my better points that I would like to give out, I guess, is because of the erosion control of this rye was phenomenal. My son does some conventional no-till. He's been no-tilling for quite a while, but there was erosion on his no-till fields. There was no cover crops out there, but this rye, I mean, that's what really impressed me is if you want to save your ground to get some sort of cover crop out there, and this roller crimping worked well for me. As far as the crimper goes, it terminated it very well. It did stool out some, but there was no viable seed on what stooled out after I crimped it. It terminated everything very well. I seeded the beans on the 6th of June and roller crimped them the next day, so that was my drill. Like everybody else says, you got to have a very good method of planting. My drill, it didn't work the best. It didn't put them in the ground the best, even in the standing rye. Like I say, I put 175,000 out there. My final stand was probably between 80 and 125,000, which probably was a little on the low side, what should be out there. That was about it. I did do some spring seeded stuff. I had about 5 acres of sod that I had moldboard plowed. I put 2 bushel of rye out there. On the 29th of May, 2 weeks later, I planted beans with our corn planter then because everything was clean. I put 172,000 out there. The planter left tracks, the rye was up 3-4 inches. The planter left some tracks out there. I had a couple bushel extra rye, so I went crosswise with our drill to fill in the tracks, the planter tracks with that rye. That ended up really good. I mean, in my opinion, it was about 45 bushel an acre according to my combine monitor anyway. The rye started to turn brown the 4th of July, and by the end of July, it was probably 8 inches tall and all brown and just dormant, just like it's supposed to be. That I would try again if the ground was level enough to moldboard plow. It was kind of a struggle in our area, I guess, anyway, to really don't like to plow anything if you don't have to. Thank you.